It's a new week on Off Duty, and we promise not a painting or sculpture in sight. Instead, we're going from rustic to robots, with a little bit of March Madness thrown in for good measure. I'm Kelsey Hubbard, and welcome to Off Duty. Because it's March, we've got college basketball fever. I'm working on my bracket, are you? If not, pay attention to Paul Vigna. He's working on his too, and he has a little professional help.
Jeff, in your story you mentioned that some people think that the Aussie dollar could get to 120 versus the US dollar.
Syracuse, Kansas, Louisville, Harvard. What's Harvard?
Wow, that'd be remarkable.
That's interesting. Can you do a little more on that?
Absolutely. It's
Paul, hold on a second. Paul, what are you doing?
Doing the show, man.
It looks like you're filling out a basketball bracket there.
Don't tell your boss.
I'm your boss, Paul.
Don't tell your boss. I gotta go, man. I gotta fill out my bracket, fellas. You do the show. That's cool. All right. Madness in the house here. Hello, everybody. I'm WSJ Live's Paul Vigna. You might remember me from some famous calls as the Giants will win Super Bowl 46. But I'll tell you what, basketball, the NCAA tournament, completely different beast. There's a reason they call it March Madness. And to help you with this bracket, we have developed a little thing that I'm calling the Madness Show. I don't know what the final name is going to be, but I'm calling it the Madness Show. And to help me with it, because I am not a big basketball guy, anyone who knows me knows that, I've gotten some of the best journalists that we have here to help us with it. I am joined by, obviously, Darren Everson, Rachel Bachman, and to my left, Ben Cohen. I want to thank you guys for helping me because I am determined to win, to fill this thing out and to win this thing, and I have no idea what I'm doing.
Just to be clear, how much longer are you going to ride this Giants thing? As the statute of limitations, I think, has run out on that.
I'm going to run it out probably 5 years past the statute of limitations, without a doubt.
Well, once the first round of the tournament's over, you can't want to ride anything else.
Once the first game's over. So listen, I want to start off. I want to ask you a strategy question.
Sure.
When you're trying to fill this thing out, should I go out in or in and out? Should I start off with who I think is going to win the championship and then work backwards, or should I just start picking games?
I kind of think so, because in a year like this, where there's one or two teams that everybody thinks is probably going to win, Kentucky or North Carolina, in some years there really isn't like a clear favorite like that, so you can kind of pick upsets. But this year, I think you need to start off and say, Kentucky's going to win the title and work from there. But you know, there are a lot of different ways of going about this. Personally, that's the way I do it.
Yeah, I see Florida State and Bonaventure. That seems like an easy one to me, right? A 3 versus a 14, is that an easy one?
Sure, but there are some 3-14s that are up for grabs this year. I mean, I knew as soon as the bracket came out, and Kentucky and Carolina, which probably are the teams with the two most talent in the country, I knew that I wanted them in the finals. But then part of the fun of filling out the bracket is figuring out how they're going to get there. So even though I knew that they would be in the finals, the Florida State versus St. Bonaventure is the reason why we all fill out these brackets, right?
Right. So that leads me to the question. The first couple of rounds, should you pick just the favorites, or should you try to pick I mean, we all know that there are upsets in this thing every year. That's what makes it really so exciting. But it's hard to pick those upsets. I mean, should I just pick all the 1s and 2s in the first round?
Not necessarily. I mean, it depends. I mean, first of all, if you're going for bragging rights, that's where you get them. You're not going to get them in the late rounds because that's when the favorites take over typically. Right. So, yeah, it just depends on your strategy. If you want to be accurate, then you might want to play it a little safer. But, you know, depends on your goal.
Yeah, my goal is to win this thing. So I want the law of large numbers on my side. So I'm thinking maybe I should just go all 1s and 2s for the first round, and then start picking some upsets.
Yeah, a 1 is never lost in the NCAA tournament first round, and there are some soft 3, 4s, and 5s this year. The 1s and 2s have kind of separated themselves, but the 3, 4, 5, 6, that's where you're going to get some value for your upsets.
Who's vulnerable?
There are a lot of teams that are vulnerable.
For some good upsets?
One upset that I love is in the Midwest region, that 6-11, 3-14. I know Darren and I both think both San Diego State and Georgetown can both go down. NC State is actually favored in that game. They're the lowest seed to be favored. And Belmont is a team that stat geeks love. And Georgetown is a team that, yeah, Belmont. You might remember them. They gave Duke a run for their money in the first round of the tournament a couple of years ago. And you know, Georgetown is definitely vulnerable to a first round loss. You could have an 11 or 14 coming out of that pod right there.
Don't get too caught up with, you know, the 8-9 matchup or just who's going to win these first round games. that doesn't decide who wins these pools. Because most pools, it's 1 point for the first round, 2 points, then 4, 8, and then it doubles. So that's not going to decide whether you win your bracket or not. It's funny, like we always come in after the first weekend on Monday morning, like checking out, oh, who's in front? Like so-and-so has 2 more points than me. That's not how these things get decided. It's, do you get 3 or 4 of the final 4 right? Do you get the champion right? That's how it's decided.
All right, last question. One word answer. Who's going to win?
North Carolina.
Kentucky.
That's 2 words. Sparty, Michigan State.
All right, I'm going with Louisville. I'm sticking with it. I'm not afraid to do it. All right, listen, we're going to cut it off there. We're going to leave it there, but we will be with you throughout the tournament to help you. We'll come back in a little while. We'll see after the first round how things go. Thursday and Friday, do some work. Try to do some work, but pay a little bit of attention to this too. Have a little fun, and we'll talk to you soon.
And if you're mad about food, raw food is the latest fad that's gone fancy. But what exactly is a raw food diet? Here's the Off-Duty 101.
I mean, the raw food diet is really, if you think about it, it's the most natural way of eating. The idea is if you don't heat it above approximately 115, 118 degrees, or you're not cooking away the enzymes and the nutrition in the food.
For me, when I get asked why do you eat raw food, there are a lot of reasons. But for the most part, as a general rule, more vitamins and micronutrients stay intact when you don't cook your food.
Well, my favorite thing about it is I have energy to go all day long. I can work 20 hours, sleep 4, get up and work 20 again, and then no problem.
My health had improved dramatically. I was sleeping better, I was digesting better, I had a lot more energy.
The protein question comes up all the time, but you know, where do cows get their protein? And they get them from plants. And people don't realize that, you know, if you look at the amount of protein in spinach, greens, nuts, seeds, there's way more than enough protein in those foods.
It strips away a lot of the processing, a lot of the added oils and fats and sugars and all of the things that we do when we cook our food every day. And it sort of forces us to be really, really ingenious with these bare bone materials of just plant-based foods.
So we make things creamy with a lot of different types of nuts. So for example, a crust on a tart might be made with almonds as a base. We use dehydrators and we dry it at a low temperature so then it'll become crispy and crunchy. We use a lot of young coconut, the soft meat from young coconuts, which has a very creamy texture. It's incredibly helpful. And that allows us to do a lot of creamy things, particularly with desserts.
So today we brought some keg kombucha. Kombucha is a fermented tea. It came originally from Western China. It starts off as a sweet tea. We add a probiotic bacteria culture to it that consumes the majority of the sugar and makes kind of a sour, very refreshing drink. The benefits of it being raw are exaggerated because of the fermentation process. Probiotic bacteria gets into your digestive system, which is really good for you.
I actually think that in some ways eating higher raw can be a lot easier than cooking everything. It takes a lot of time to simmer soups and bake things. And
it's very easy to start with fresh fruit for breakfast or raw granola cereals.
I think it's more about what you don't eat when you focus on a raw foods diet. You're not focusing on as many packaged foods and processed foods. You're not eating out of boxes. You're not eating out of your pantry as much. You're really focusing on produce.
What's more rustic than a log cabin out in the country? Check out some of our favorites. of the time on Off Duty, we propose interesting and unique ways to spend money. But what if you want to actually save money for a change? Robert Frank is here with Money Talks and a few tips on how to preserve your wealth.
I call it the success paradox. The way to make a lot of money is to borrow and concentrate in one company or one idea. Those two things are the very things that most destroy wealth. So people today have to make this sudden mind shift. Once they've made a lot of wealth, you have to totally reverse your thinking. And instead of saying, I'm going to put all my eggs in one basket and use borrowing and leverage to grow, you've got to start diversifying and becoming a lot more conservative about preserving your wealth. I have a few rules that people should follow to preserve their wealth. Number one is debt. Debt is the one thing that can take a large fortune and wipe it out very quickly. And so, in my view, debt should never exceed 20% of your total net worth. Rule number two relates to spending. People should never spend more than 5% of their total net worth in any single given year. Now, a lot of wealthy families are even more rigid than that. They say you should never spend more than your investable assets can earn in a totally unrisky investment like bonds or treasuries. So if your treasury bonds are yielding $300,000 a year from your total wealth, you should never spend more than that. Number three is assets. When you get wealthy, you need to diversify. So you should have no single asset, whether it's a house or a company, that accounts for more than 20% of your wealth. And the last thing I would say relates to liquidity. It's very important to have no more than 20% of your total assets in an illiquid asset. Now, a house is illiquid, some commodities are illiquid, but basically you want 80% of your wealth in things like stocks, bonds, cash, things that you can sell in one day.
And we're going to end on a fun note because really, what's more fun than flying robots? They're tiny, they're fast, and they can play music.
They glide like mechanical hummingbirds or alien drones in a sci-fi film. These tiny robots, presented at this year's TED 2012 conference by University of Pennsylvania's Vijay Kumar, are called quadrotors, computer-operated helicopters that can move in a multitude of directions.
Our goal is to build really smart, agile robots that can operate in 3 dimensions. And we think that when you scale down robots to small sizes, you get agility, and the quadrotors represent the best design approach for these kinds of robots. And so what we're trying to do is to develop these small robots that can cooperatively map buildings, cooperatively pick up and transport objects in buildings, and basically operate in environments where it's dangerous for humans to operate in. And robots like this have a lot of exciting applications. For example, you can send them inside buildings to respond to emergencies. They can be used for construction operations, carrying small beams and columns and assembling them into structures. We can send them into buildings after natural disasters to assess damage, or after the recent nuclear accident in Fukushima, you could imagine these robots being sent in to map radiation levels after nuclear accidents. And it could also be used for general purpose tasks such as transporting objects.
In the TED demonstration, a room was fitted with infrared lights and cameras, and reflectors were put on the quadrotor struts. Each unit was programmed to reach a certain point in space at an exact time. In this case, those times and places translated into notes on instruments in the room.
The presentation at TED was really about our research efforts. So we were asked to explain the technologies, why it represents the cutting edge of research in robotics, and what practical applications it might have. But the E in TED stands for entertainment, and so we promised them a demonstration of the technology that might have some entertainment value. So we put together this musical video where we had 9 different robots playing 6 different instruments autonomously, and we chose the James Bond theme song.
Thanks for watching WSJ Off Duty. Don't forget to click above to subscribe. I'm Kelsey Hubbard for Off Duty. We'll see you next time.